there. Today I would like to show you how to create a double-sided hoop, which is something I do with every single one of my finished pieces. I just think it creates a really nice professional line and I love the way it looks. And I've gotten a lot of questions about it, so I thought I would make you guys a tutorial video. In order to complete this project, you're going to need a hot glue gun, which I have right over here, as well as both large and small scissors, and your hoops, of course. You will also need backing fabric for your hoop. You can leave this plain. I like to stitch my logo onto it, if you can kind of see that there. I know it's blurry, but you can put phrases, you can put names, you can stitch anything on this. It can be part of the piece, or it can just be plain fabric, whatever you want. Do make sure that you have ironed both your original piece and your backing fabric though. You don't want a lot of wrinkles in those. So the first thing that we're going to do is take your hoop apart. I really like these faux wood hoops because they're flexible. You can also see they go all the way around, unlike your typical wooden hoop. So there's not that gap in the top, and that means you're going to cover up all of your edges, which is always desirable for a nice, clean, professional look. We're going to start off by placing your front piece, wherever you have done your main embroidery, over the inside of your hoop. Make sure that you're centering it perfectly. This is where it's going to end up, and it's going to be glued down, so there's no redoing it. Make sure it's in that right spot, and then go ahead and put your outer hoop on, however you're doing that. If it's a wooden one, screw it nice and tight. If it's one of these faux wood ones, you just want to make sure that you're pulling all around and getting that fabric as taut as possible. Regardless, you don't want any wrinkles. You want it to be very, very tight. Now, I don't normally like to stitch a piece in one of these faux wood hoops because it really can't pull the fabric tight enough. But for the sake of framing, it works really well. You're able to pull it tight and then you're not really putting any tension on it. So it is perfect for very nice framing. If you tuck all the fabric under like this, you can kind of get an idea of what it's gonna look like in the end, so you can really make sure you're centered without the distraction of all of that side fabric around. Our next step is going to be to cut off all of the excess fabric. We want just enough to fold over that edge and sort of into the inside, but you don't want any excess fabric to be laying on the hoop because you will be able to see that through the front of the hoop sometimes. So you just want to cut all the way around in a circle, giving yourself maybe a little less than ½ inch, just depending on how big your hoop is. So our next step is to score the fabric, which means cut slits in it all the way around. I use the little scissors for this because it's easier. I do my slits about 1 inch apart, maybe even 1.5 inches if I'm being lazy, but the smaller you do them, ultimately the neater it's going to look. With thin fabric, like I'm using here, this is just a thin cotton, you don't even necessarily need to score the fabric, but it'll make it lay flatter in the end. And if you're using any kind of thick fabric, like a denim or a corduroy or like drapery fabric of any kind, you definitely want to score the fabric because otherwise it's going to be very, very lumpy when you put the extra backing fabric on it. And we're done. All nice and fluffy with slits all the way around. Our next step is going to be to glue all these down. We're putting glue all the way around the inside of the hoop. I like to put it like right on the edge of the hoop rather than on the top or on the side. And I usually start with the top of the hoop where the hanger is, especially if it has an open top, because you want those to lay down the absolute flattest. I always move in a counterclockwise direction when doing this, and I did counterclockwise one time, and it just, oh, don't burn yourself, and it just did not work. So I don't know why that is, but that's a thing. And we're just going to continue gluing these pieces down all the way around the hoop, making sure that each one is laying nice and flat and is very secure. Now that your piece is completed like this, you really don't have to do anything with it. Everything is glued down nicely. You can just leave it this way. And I usually leave it this way until I've actually sold the piece. And then once I've sold it, I ask people what they would like on the back, and I add the backing to it at that point. But we are going to go ahead and add a backing now, so take that outer hoop off. You can actually leave it like this too. It's pretty interesting without any extra hoop on it. Most people don't do it this way. We are going to flip the piece over, making sure that we keep it perfectly straight. This will just help you line everything up later, especially if you have something on your back rather than just a plain piece of fabric. Lay your back piece over the hoop and make sure you have it centered. Again, if it's plain, that's not a big deal. If you have writing or anything like my logo here on it, then you really want to make sure that you're getting it in just the right place, because again, we're gluing it down and there are no backsies. Pick up the hoop from either side if you can, if it's not too big for that, and expose the top edge here. That's where we're going to start putting the glue. You want to put it close to the actual edge of the hoop rather than just on the side. So I put it like right on the corner. Don't put too much glue. You don't want to go crazy with it, but you want a good amount there. And then fold the fabric back over and just kind of press it into place. You're not pulling anything yet because you only have this one side attached. But as we move on, we're going to start pulling the fabric and making sure it's as tight as we can make it. The back is never going to be quite as tight as the front when you're doing this, even if you're very careful. But we want to make it as tight as possible. So now we're going to apply in the opposite direction of where we just put glue. You always want to go straight to the opposite. So since we glued the top first, now we're going to glue the exact opposite of the bottom. And now as you're gluing it down, you're kind of pulling the fabric. I push it down with my thumbs like this to make sure that it's pulling against the other glue that's already been applied as much as possible. Make sure it's nice and well stuck on there. So now we're going to start gluing down the sides. I like to do this in two parts rather than just one. You're sort of creating this diagonal pull against each other so that it causes an X across the piece rather than just side to side. So we've done this top corner, and then we're going to turn the piece and do the bottom corner that's opposite of where we just glued down, and that's going to pull the fabric against itself and make it a lot tighter than it would be if we just allowed the hoop to hold it in place or put glue in random places. Alright, and we've got it glued on all sides now, all the way around. It's nice and secure. It's much tighter now than it would be if we just allowed the hoop to hold it on. There's a nice amount of tautness in the center here. You can see that's kind of resisting my finger poking it. It's not going to be as tight as your front part is. You can see there's a lot less give on that side, but that's generally okay. The hoop is also going to tighten it up as you put that on, and it's going to keep it nice and secure. So now we need to cut off all of this excess fabric. You want to cut looking at the front side. That way you know that you're cutting past the line and it's not going to be seen on the front of the hoop, but you're not cutting too close. If you go too far, if you make this part right here too small, it will actually come up off the other side of the hoop, especially if you haven't necessarily glued every single little bit of it down. So you do want to make sure that you still have an overlap, but like right here, that would be seen on the front. So that needs to go. Little scissors will be easier to get it off with, maybe, if I can hold on to it. Yeah, so now it's short enough that you're not going to see that when the hoop goes over it. You don't want it to show through the front of the hoop. I'm gonna try cutting from the back right now just to see if this is a good idea, because nope, I already don't like it. Nope, don't cut from the back. Cut from the front so you can see what you're doing. All right, and there you go. That's the back of your hoop. Looks beautiful. And the front, beautiful as well. All that is left is to put that outer hoop on, and you'll be good to go. You do want to make sure at this point that you've lined everything up correctly and that there's nothing extra hanging over the edges. Just make sure everything is perfect. If it's not, there's not a lot you can do about it. And then we're going to put that outer hoop back on. You want to make sure that that center is right where it needs to be. You're putting this on from the back, so if there's nothing on the back of your hoop, that can be kind of difficult. You want to make sure that you've laid your hoop down perfectly straight, or you're just going to have to take it off and redo it multiple times, which I've been there, done that. It's long and annoying. So try to get it lined up beforehand and then get that outer hoop back on in just the right place. Snap it in place. And just make sure that with the bulk of the fabric under it, it's still in the proper location. Sometimes it can kind of lean towards the back or the front. There you go. Oh yeah, see here in this corner, it's not quite pushed up. Get all of the little threads off. And that is your finished hoop. Double-sided, centered perfectly. I like to hold them up like this to make sure that they're hanging correctly sometimes. And that's all it takes to create a beautiful double-sided hoop.